guys, welcome to Telling the Told and Untold. My name is Tshego. Happy 2025. This year I want to be more consistent in terms of my mental health, my physical health, my spirituality, my YouTube channel, my content creation. I have a good feeling about this year. Let me know what your guys' plan is for the year. What are you guys feeling? What do you guys want to do more of? I'm also a bit sick, so please excuse me if I do sound a bit nasally. Before we go straight into today's case, I do have a couple of content warnings for you guys. In this video, we do talk about assault, and this case does involve witchcraft and tokoloshes and things like that. So if that's not something you think you're interested in watching, then this video probably isn't for you. So maybe you can watch some of my other videos or just wait for my next upload. Also, this case happened in the mid-1900s, so there are little to no pictures, and I do apologize about that. Today's case is taking us all the way to Umkomas and Umzumkulu valleys in KwaZulu-Natal, where Elifasi Msomi was born in 1910. Elifasi was described as someone who was very jovial, well-behaved, he seemed normal, and he was a kind person. Elifasi was a nyanga, which is also a traditional healer or a sangoma, and his practice wasn't doing as well as he expected it to do. So he went to go see another traditional healer and kind of just get some advice, maybe get some muti or just something that would help his practice grow and be more successful. So he saw this traditional healer once off, then he went home and things didn't change, so he decided to return to this traditional healer. And this is when this traditional healer told Elifasi that in order for him to be successful, for his practice to grow, he had to take this traditional healer's son out, and he had to take the lives of 15 people. And when Elifasi looked at this traditional healer's son, he noticed that it wasn't actually his son, it was a Tokoloshe. So for the next 18 months, Elifasi and this Tokoloshe would roam around the back ends of KwaZulu-Natal. They would eat together, they would sleep together, and Elifasi would say that the Tokoloshe would be the one to kill, and he wasn't. At last, they made it to the Zibaville kraal, and they found a girl whose blood was to the Tokoloshe's liking, and then the Tokoloshe killed her and put some of her blood in a bottle. And during the months that followed, 14 more people would fall victim to Elifasi and the Tokoloshe. So let's talk about what the Tokoloshe means in the South African folklore sense. A Tokoloshe is said to be a mythical creature, often described as mischievous or sinister. It's dwarf-like and it has supernatural powers. And this concept originates from Zulu mythology, though it does appear in the various other South African cultures. A Tokoloshe is usually described as something that's very small, it's hairy, it has big eyes or big ears, and their appearance really depends on the person that's telling you the story about them. And in some depictions they're very terrifying, they're scary, and in other stories they just seem mischievous and somewhat harmless. Tokoloshes are believed to have magical abilities such as being invisible, and they are often associated with causing harm, illness, or misfortune to people, and they are often requested by people who want to cause harm onto others, and this is usually done by going to go see a traditional healer, a sangoma, and kind of getting them to put a sort of curse on these people. It's said to bring bad luck, and some people say that it could be seen as a protector, but more likely a protector to the person who is using it to harm other people. Fear of Tokoloshes have led people to elevate their beds on bricks to prevent it from reaching them while they sleep, and it's often blamed for really unexplained events from accidents to illnesses, more so in rural communities or people who are very superstitious. I think it's also important to note that different people believe different things. So, yes. The first murder took place in late August, early September 1953. Elifasi was with his partner Mandlovu. Some sources say that she was his mistress, but either way they made their way to this kraal, and at this kraal they found Olivia, who's 20 years old, as well as her father. They stayed there for a couple of days, and then they left this kraal to go back to Elifasi's homestead, and Elifasi managed to take Olivia with them because he had promised her father that she was going to get married to one of his family members. They then made their way to Elifasi's homestead, which was quite a distance. It would take them a few weeks. They got onto a bus, then they got off the bus, they walked for a bit, and then the sun set and it was dark, so they had to rest for the night. At this point, it said that Mandlovu had a newborn and she was nursing. So there was also a newborn with them, and they went to bed. And sometime during the night, Olivia went to Mandlovu, woke her up and told her that Elifasi was just trying to get with her. And Mandlovu kind of just ignored her and just went to bed, just focused on herself. And then Elifasi sexually assaulted Olivia. Again, Olivia woke up Mandlovu and tried to tell her that something was going on, and again Mandlovu just ignored her, and Elifasi sexually assaulted her for the second time that night. In the early hours of the morning, Mandlovu then saw Elifasi stab Olivia. And maybe because she had this newborn baby, she just really didn't want to get involved. She didn't say anything. She just kind of saw it. And then the two of them continued their journey to Elifasi's homestead. And their journey had about 2 weeks left at this point. It's also said that Elifasi took some of Olivia's blood and kept it in a bottle. As they were making their way home, they finally made it to the wards of Chief Zulu Dlamini and spent the night there. And it was there when Mandlovu finally went to one of the elders, I'm assuming, in that homestead, in that community, and told them what Elifasi had done, and told them that she had witnessed him killing a woman. And then two men went to Elifasi and they confronted him, and he didn't deny it. He told them that it was true and that he had killed a woman. So they took him in and they wanted to bring him in front of Chief Dlamini, but Chief Dlamini was not around. So they kind of just arrested him and kept him locked up. But this didn't last long, because in the middle of the night, Elifasi managed to escape, and he would later say that it was the Tokoloshe that freed him. With Elifasi having escaped, these people in this community went to the police to go report this murder, and a sergeant was assigned to the case. They then went to go speak to Mandlovu, and Mandlovu got into a car with the sergeant, and they went to the area that they had slept that previous night, where she said that Elifasi had killed Olivia, and the sergeant looked around the area, and it didn't take him too long to find Olivia's body. By the end of November, 2 more murders take place. It was a 70 to 75-year-old man as well as his 65-year-old wife, and it is believed that Elifasi was related to this woman somehow. So Elifasi manages to get to their kraal, and he spends the night there. This 70 to 75-year-old man had recently sold a cow for about 25 pounds. I'm not too sure how much that is in today's money. I'll try to find the conversions to get an accurate amount and put it on the side. But he had recently sold a cow for about 25 pounds, and Elifasi was just there. He spent the night, and then the next morning he went to people in this community and he told them that this man had died in his sleep. He said that the man was probably ill, or like he had died from old age. It wasn't like really a shock, but the people in the community were suspicious and they decided to call the police. And before the police arrived to find this man and sort of investigate, Elifasi managed to escape without being seen, and he disappeared with the 25 pounds that this man had gotten from selling his cow, and the man's wife also disappeared. Her body would be found about 2 weeks later. December rolls in and Elifasi then goes to another kraal, and there he tells them that his name is John Ngobo and that he is an Nduna at a nearby farm. And an Nduna is basically someone who just watches over the people that are working on the farm. He manages day-to-day operations. He's able to find new people to come work on the farm. And this was a great cover story because he got to this kraal and he told them that he was looking for workers and they would be paid about £5. This is when a woman who's said to be a dombolozi, I think that's someone who just works on a farm, I could be mistaken, and her 1-year-old daughter, they decided to go with Elifasi for this job opportunity. And then he also takes 3 little kids who are aged between 10 to 15 years old, and he leaves with these 5 people. After a couple of days, he returns with the lady, the dombolozi, and her 1-year-old daughter because the lady wasn't feeling too well, and he just tells the people in this kraal, this homestead, that the kids were doing fine and they were working and just making income. Before he leaves again, he manages to take another child with him. A few days pass and he goes back to this homestead and he tells the people there again that the kids are fine, they're doing well, they're working, and then he leaves. And they only sort of became suspicious when Elifasi had a meeting with one of the people in that community and he missed this meeting and they couldn't get a hold of him. So they then decided to go to the farm where he said he worked, and they got there but there was no Elifasi and the 4 children were not there. They found the farm owner and they kind of told him about this John Ngobo, how he took these 4 children for this job, and he said that he had never heard of that man and he kind of just didn't know what they were talking about. And this is when they realized that their 4 kids were missing. Somehow after this, Elifasi manages to go back to this homestead and he manages to take the lady, the dombolozi, and her 1-year-old child, and he manages to leave with them. The bodies of these 6 people were found the following year in June, July, but they weren't all together. They were kind of spread apart except for the 3 children that had lived together on the same day, and this kind of indicates that Elifasi killed them at different times. It's also believed that he did use the dombolozi to kind of help him get into other homesteads. It said that he managed to go to another kraal, another homestead, and he had dombolozi with him and kind of tried to get like people to go with him. I'm not too sure that worked, but then he managed to go to a 3rd homestead that was kind of like they were all relatively close to one another, and at this point dombolozi wasn't with him, so it's assumed that before he went to this 3rd one he had killed her. So he gets to this 3rd homestead and he meets a man and a woman, and he gives this man a skirt and tells this man to give it to his wife. And it turned out that the skirt had been stolen from his previous victims. He then asks the headman if he could take one of his daughters to go with him to go pick up some potatoes, and said that these potatoes would be returned to them with their daughter, and this man and his wife agreed and let their daughter, who was between 14 to 18 years old, leave with Elifasi. And about 5 to 6 days later, a body was found, and the headman identified her as his daughter that had left with this man that had given him a skirt and said that she was just going to get some potatoes. It said that her underwear was pulled down below the knee and the petticoat on the dress was pulled over her head. Around that same time, in May 1954, Elifasi goes to a different kraal and he asks if he could borrow a horse because his wife was sick, so he just needed to borrow this horse so that he could go get some medication for her, and then he disappears with this horse. A few months later, during the winter, he goes to another kraal and he's on the same horse that he had taken, and he finds a 70-year-old man there. He tells this man that he is selling a horse, and the two of them come to an agreement, and the 70-year-old man said that he would buy the horse for about 11 pounds, and they make an agreement. The man gets on his horse, Elifasi is on his horse, and they kind of ride away into the sunset. And this man just assumed that he would leave with this man to get to the location of this horse that he had just bought, but he never returned home and his body was found later. The next victim was a woman named Ntombeni, and Elifasi had managed to take her away from her home by promising her marriage, and she was never seen again. In October, Elifasi goes to another kraal and he tells them that he's looking for a sangoma because his wife is sick. And he would continue going to this kraal a couple of times, kind of building their trust, and they kind of knew him as this man. He said his surname was Shusha, so they called him Mr. Shusha, and they knew that Mr. Shusha had a sick wife. And after being at that kraal a couple of times, there was a 14-year-old boy named Putu, and he said that he wanted a job. And this is when Elifasi told him that he knew of a job that was next to the farm that he owned, and it was owned by a European man, and he told this 14-year-old boy that he would earn about £2 a week, and then he managed to leave with this boy. The boy's body was found the following year in February. By the end of December, Elifasi returns to the same kraal and lets them know that the 14-year-old boy is fine, and he manages to lure another woman who is between the ages of 35 to 40 with him. Then about 3 days later, he returns to the same kraal and he tells them that the lady is fine, it's just that she's sick, so she's seeing a doctor, and somehow he manages to leave with a third woman. The following year, in January 1955, Elifasi returns to the same kraal where he had already taken 3 people. He goes to a woman and tells her that she needs to come with him so that she would be able to get Punu's pounds that he had been working for, the money that he had been working for, and he told her that the European man had taken Upunu to a different place, but she just had to come get the money that he had worked hard for. So she left with him and she never returned. Her body was found 12 days later, and somehow Elifasi had managed to take 4 people from the same kraal. After the murder of the 15th victim, the Tokoloshe told Elifasi that he had done a good job and said that their job together was done and they just needed to go into a river and wash, and then they would go their separate ways. After they had done this, the Tokoloshe then gave Elifasi the axe and the knife that they had been using throughout their 15 victim murder spree, and then the Tokoloshe left. And for a couple of weeks, Elifasi struggled to believe that the Tokoloshe had actually left him and wasn't following him, but eventually he did believe that he was alone, so then he decided to bury the axe and he then went to look for employment in Port Edward at a banana plantation, and it said that he was a junior something on this farm, and apparently he had a wife. And things for Elifasi seemed to be going fine until the 3rd of May 1955, when he was arrested for stealing a plant from a farmer. And obviously this was during apartheid, and Elifasi was black and he worked for a white farmer. So then he is arrested, and when he's arrested, they kind of realize that this was the person that they had been looking for in connection with Olivia's murder, and they do some investigation and link him to 14 other murders. Elifasi admitted to the crimes, and he even helped the police find the skull of one of his victims. And it said that that night in jail he slept so peaceful, the most peaceful he had ever slept in almost 2 years. And in the middle of the night, it said that he kind of made space on his rag bed, and the other people in the same prison cell kind of saw him make him space, and he just told them that he was making space for a friend. He said it's just a friend, but they didn't see this friend that he was making space for. Elifasi denied that he had ever taken any items belonging to the victims, whether it be money or clothing. He also told them that he was not the one to have committed the murders, but said that it was the Tokoloshe. And after this, he was referred to a medical observation and testing to assess his mental health. And upon further psychological analysis, it was determined that he was of much higher intelligence than your average person, and it's also said that he gained sexual pleasure from inflicting pain. It also turned out that there were 2 victims who survived. So on the 12th of October 1954, Elias had managed to convince these 2 women to go with him to a farm, or a plantation. So they were walking together, the 3 of them, and he kind of told them that they had to walk in a straight line. So it was the 2 women in front of him and he was behind. And as they were walking, he hit the woman in front of him on the back of her head, and she immediately fell to the floor. And the woman that was walking in front of them, she managed to run away, and then Elifasi tried to run after the woman that was in the front, and then he returned to the woman who was lying on the floor. He managed to take all of her money, and then he decided to go after the woman who was in front to try and catch her, but he didn't manage to, and he made his way back to the woman who was on the floor. But she had managed to kind of crawl into some nearby bushes and hide. And Elifasi looked for her, but he couldn't find her. And after a while, he kind of just let out an angry sigh and he just left. The 2 women came forward and told their stories about their encounter with Elifasi, but he was never charged with attempted murder. During the trial, the courts did say that they didn't believe that Elifasi had been roaming around KwaZulu-Natal for almost 2 years, just following the bidding of a Tokoloshe and kind of not having any control of what he did. And they also found out that he had stolen some items from the victims. He had taken money, he had taken clothing. They also determined that Elifasi was suffering from syphilis, but they said that this did not affect his mind at all. And they said that they accepted that all these facts basically implied that Elifasi was a cold-blooded and savage murderer. And thereafter, he was found guilty for murdering 15 people, and their ages ranged from 1 to 75 years old. In the end, Elifasi Msomi said that he realized the reason why he was found guilty in the white or European courts was because they didn't understand the Tokoloshe, and said that if he had went to trial with Zulu people, then he was going to be found not guilty. Elifasi Msomi was sentenced to death and was hung on the 10th of February 1956 in Pretoria Central Prison. The process was observed by 9 Zulu chiefs and elders to ensure that the Tokoloshe does not help him escape death, though many of them feared that Elifasi Msomi himself would return as a Tokoloshe after his death. Unfortunately, cases that involve a Tokoloshe are not once off. In 2001, Sipho Ronald Khumalo prepared a cocktail of herbs and paraffin and force-fed his girlfriend's child, and once the child fell asleep, he then beat the child until they died. And he claimed that he had higher powers and he knew that this child was a Tokoloshe. And then in 2004, Colin Pillay lost his wife in an apparent suicide, and he would later go on to say that she was killed by a Tokoloshe and she had been bewitched by black magic. And that's it for today's case. I know it was a bit different, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out my channel a lot, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!